All right, yesterday on the podcast, we talked about BYU's defensive tackle position having major question marks that I don't think that there is a ready-made answer for them in the near-term future. Well, today I want to flip the script and talk about a position group that I believe has got the goods and will absolutely be a force for BYU to utilize this fall. That is BYU's wide receivers. I don't believe that there is a position group, and I've been saying this for quite some time. For those of you who are everydayers here on the podcast, you heard me talk about this like a broken record about the fact that BYU's wide receiving core is the deepest and most talented unit on BYU's entire football roster. I believe it absolutely is because you have your top 6 guys returning from last season. If you include Keanu Hill, who's now a tight end, but all of them should be better prepared and more well versed in what to expect out of the Big 12 rigors of what the season entails for them. Obviously, there's injury concerns for guys like Chase Roberts, Kody Epps, also Darius Lassiter. They have had to overcome injuries during their previous seasons as college football players. But if they should stay healthy, that trio of Lassiter, Roberts, and Epps, it sounds like a law firm in many respects, should be BYU's top trio in my mind. But they have 3 guys right behind them that are just as good, if not better in certain circumstances, in Keelan Marion, Parker Kingston, and obviously Jojo Phillips, who is starting to emerge and really, I think, could take the next step this fall. That is a top 6 of wide receivers that many programs out there would love to have. Is there a Puka Nacua in that bunch? Is there a Cody Hoffman? Maybe not. Maybe they're not going to have a guy who's going to go for 1,000 yards. But between those 6 players, I could see a very real scenario with each of them going over 500 yards on the season and allowing whoever ends up as quarterback, whether that's Jake Retzloff or Gary Bohannon, to easily have 3,000 yards passing. And that obviously go a long way to helping BYU have success on the gridiron this fall. And I'm just saying that that's a conservative number, 3,000 passing yards, 500 yards between these guys, and a handful of touchdowns amongst the bunch. Be a really cool outcome. The other thing is, though, is that this wide receiving core, its depth and its versatility are going to allow Fesi Sitake as the position group coach and obviously the passing game coordinator for the BYU football program to be able to redshirt guys like a 4-star talent in Cody Hagen and a high 3-star talent in Dominique McKenzie. I'm not saying that BYU is going to make sure that these guys stay off the field, because if they prove they're capable, why wouldn't you throw them on the field? Those two were 2 of the fastest sprinters in their high school careers in the state of Utah in the recent memory. Cody Hagen is a bona fide star in the making if he lives up to the billing he had coming out of Corner Canyon High School. Dominique McKenzie is the son of former BYU running back standout Brigham McKenzie. His brother Marcus is a standout cornerback prospect for BYU on the defensive side of the football. If those 2 players prove capable, BYU will not hesitate in putting them on the field. But if they should have any of those concerns that a lot of returned missionaries for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints seem to have in returning to play football, you have 6 guys in front of them who are more than capable of shouldering the load, allowing these other 2 high-level prospects to kind of emerge on their own timeline and hopefully become the star players that they want to become in due time, while the other guys kind of overshadow the fact that they have not seen the field maybe early on in their BYU careers. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have a guy like Cody Hagen waiting in the wings for the BYU football program. Think about that. If he's your 7th best wide receiver this fall, and he's a former 4-star talent that seemingly everybody in the Intermountain West, if not the nation, wanted to sign out of high school, that is an incredible luxury to have for Kalani Sitake and the BYU Cougars. Dominique McKenzie, same deal. He's an absolute burner, a speedster who showed some flashes during spring camp coming off of a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He is absolutely going to be in the mix. And oh, by the way, there's another Nacua in the mix. Tei Nacua comes in from BYU as a freshman from Timpview High School. Yes, if you believe the reports, he's a little more raw than his other brothers because he came kind of late to playing the sport of football. But when you have the last name Nacua, I'll just tell you this much. What I know of the Nacua family is that the talent base is there to have him step up and really become a standout player for BYU in time. That's the 9th guy I have mentioned in this wide receiver core. And I haven't even mentioned some of the walk-ons BYU's got to add to the mix here. Also a scholarship player in Jaron Kalama. It is an incredible collection of talent that Fesi Sitake has assembled at BYU. If you're Jake Retzloff, if you're Gary Bohannon, if you're Trayson Bourget, McKay Hillstead, Noah Lugo, Cody Hagen, Cole Hagen, the other quarterbacks on BYU's roster who may spend time on the scout team, speaking of the kind of the final three I'd mentioned there, to have potentially a guy like a Cody Hagen as your star receiver on the scout team, that's going to be really cool and going to make for a really, really interesting practice for BYU's defensive backs to go up against. It is incredible to consider what this wide receiving core could become for BYU. Do I believe that one of them could emerge and become that quote-unquote Puka Nacua, the alpha in the group? Maybe so. And I would put my money on Darius Lassiter doing that because it's his final season and he's shown a lot of glimpses of just game-breaking potential. But even if he doesn't emerge like that, I think the sum total of the parts for BYU at wide receiver right now, it is going to more than make up for, not having the Austin Collie or as I mentioned, Cody Hoffman that you seem to have favored in the past as being the true alpha for BYU at wide receiver. This is a really, really talented wide receiving core. And Fesi Sitake, his biggest thing, I think, going into training camp is trying to dole out reps enough to get a feel for who truly is his top three, who the next three are, and then what the future looks like with a Cody Hagen, a Dominique McKenzie, and or Tei Nacua, Jaren Kalama on down the list. It's kind of ridiculous to consider how much talent there is at wide receiver, but frankly, if BYU wants to be a force in the Big 12 as a football program, not saying just as an individual unit, BYU needs to recruit like Fesi Sitake is recruited to the BYU wide receiving core. You need to go 3 and 4 deep at certain positions on the football field if you truly want to be the elite of the Big 12 conference. That will obviously require time for all the position groups for BYU to accomplish that. I talked about yesterday on the podcast how I am very concerned for the future of BYU's defensive tackle position. I know that Jeff Hansen indicated that he believes Sione Puha is probably the least capable, or the power rankings of BYU's top recruiters. He's in last place, but the opportunity is there for a program like BYU to really emerge if they start to collect talent in bunches. And Fesi Sitake has kind of laid the groundwork, and I guess I'm trying to say he's kind of written the rules for how to go about this for BYU. Yes, you have to hit the transfer portal. Yes, you have to hit the high school recruiting ranks and love guys up and make them feel like they're part of something bigger in terms of picking BYU. But should BYU pull that off, they are going to be able to have a wide receiving group. And speaking of other position groups as well, if they follow the same path, to where BYU will be considered among the Big 12's elite. I've been listening to podcasts getting ready for the season that think BYU's in the bottom tier of the Big 12 this season. And I think it's for good reason. But I think that wide receiving core for BYU, they will not be the reason that BYU's in the bottom tier. I think it'll be other position groups that will fail BYU and will doom them to that basement if they truly do end up in the basement. But if this is a program that is set to exceed expectations, kind of sail on into the future and really show that they've made progress in the Big 12 conference, I think this wide receiving core could be a major part of that and could be a big talking point for all those talking heads out there when they look back on this BYU football season, looking at it saying, wow, those wide receivers really emerged and really showed that, the sum total of the parts was greater than the individuals in that room. And I hope it comes to fruition. I want BYU football to have a big season this year. And I think that wide receiving core, it absolutely has a critical role to play in any success or failure that BYU will endure this fall.